Hi and welcome to the Bruce Channel. I'm Bruce. Away last week, so lots of stuff to get to. Obviously, first, the Egypt Air flight that went down Thursday morning. My deadline makes almost no difference in this because, they'll be learning things for weeks, and a final determination won't be possibly even for years. And that is premised on the successful recovery and the utility of the black boxes. Now, at my deadline, all they know is that it's down. They have ID'd some airplane parts, some human remains, and it's another tragedy. Neither the first nor the last, but for those directly involved, it is the worst. So, was there an explosion? Maybe. If so, was it an explosion as in a short circuit near the fuel system? Explosion from a bomb? Maybe. Don't know yet. At my deadline, no organization has claimed credit, and that would be unusual, word an act of terrorism, so we'll see. At least so far we don't have, what's his name, General McInerney predicting it's hijacked to Pakistan. He kept saying that 2 years ago about the Malaysian flight that disappeared. However, I have to say this, it did reveal what a pitiful wretch is Donald Trump. Around 5:30 Thursday morning, no one yet knew anything, not even for sure that it was down. He tweeted, "Looks like yet another terrorist attack. Airplane departed from Paris. When will we get tough? Smart and vigilant. Great hate and sickness." Point one. It's now days later at my deadline. We still don't know if the cause was terrorism. Point two. What does he mean, when will we get tough? Who's we? No American personnel had anything to do with anything. No passengers, no crew, nothing. And I would mention that just in recent weeks stateside, we're hearing about the bigger than usual delays at our airports, and that's because TSA has tightened security. But even if they doubled or tripled or quadrupled, not one thing would have changed regarding the Egypt flight. Nothing. So what does he mean by, when will we get tough? Has no meaning, like most of what he says. It's without meaning. But his tweet further self-reveals. It reveals his inhumanity. He might have started with something like, our hearts and our prayers go out to the loved ones, the family, Those words don't accomplish anything, but it's the traditional expression of sympathy. It proves a bit of humanity, a bit of empathy. But what would you expect from a guy who looks in the mirror and sees God? What would you expect from a guy who said this about a genuine war hero, Senator John McCain?
He's not a war hero.
He's a war hero.
He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
Do you agree with that?
He's a war hero because he was captured.
So obviously the people on the plane are losers too. After all, they got captured. Just like the first responders caught in the Twin Towers, they too were captured. To paraphrase Joseph Welch, have you no shame, sir? Have you no shame, sir? At long last, have you no sense of decency? But he probably doesn't, because words mean nothing to him. He says what he thinks in the moment, just like Eddie Haskell. He had told us he would release his taxes, but then last week said, nah. Perhaps not without cause, Senator Marco Rubio called him a con man. Trump University is being sued and prosecuted. To say I was disgusted by the field of 17 that originally tried for the GO nomination would be inaccurate. To say I was disgusted by some of them would not be inaccurate. But what's really disappointing, Rand Paul, Marco Rubio, Lindsey Graham, they condemned him as a potential candidate, as did 96 nominee Bob Dole and 08's nominee John McCain, and all of them, even in a hold-your-nose way, have now endorsed Trump. Even Senator John McCain, the maverick, and he's not a war hero, he was captured. I find it absolutely shocking. To their credit, Presidents Bush, George Herbert Walker, and George W., as well as Jeb, and 2012 nominee Mitt Romney have stuck by their principles. Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, Hillary barely won in Kentucky. Bernie won big in Oregon, but Hillary, despite her own complications, keeps getting closer and closer to the final lap. And I have said this election was shaping up as one seen never before. It may be, though, that I'll have to co-opt the Jewish Defense League slogan in a few months and say never again. I see where Bayer, the aspirin people, made an unsolicited bid to buy Monsanto. In the article, Monsanto was called a seed company, and I don't feel threatened by their seeds, other than the seeds they've made resistant to their other big product, Roundup. So now what? Bayer? They make pesticides too, in addition to aspirin. So one more big super company able to buy its will among governments of the world. So now when the cancer from the glyphosate hurts bad enough, we just take more aspirin. It's quite a business model. Charter Communications was given approval to buy Time Warner. Okay, so if I don't have to see Bill Cowher as a Time Warner employee, that's maybe a good thing. But otherwise, will the last person on earth who doesn't end up working for a mega corporation please turn out the lights? That's where we seem to be heading. And if you draw the line far enough out, we'll have one retailer, we'll have one cable provider, one oil refinery, one airline. All right, so it's been over a month, but various events got in the way. I wanted to tell you of this earlier. I finally did see the correct version of Concussion, the one with Will Smith playing Dr. Amalu, and not the one with the lesbian housewife who got hit on the head with a baseball. It was a good movie. And I can say that, as was true with Apollo 11 and other movies where the outcome is already known. Even though I knew the outcome, it was a really good movie. I would recommend it. But I'd also recommend you watch the documentary called League of Denial, pardon me, which interviews not only Dr. Amalu, but also others who have researched chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, the chronic brain disease, which is caused by repeated hits in football. The NFL's protests and their safety-seeking rules and their committees and research notwithstanding, the documentary makes pretty clear that the NFL really hasn't been all that forthcoming. So with the players only getting bigger and faster, there, in my opinion, is only one outcome possible, not soon. 25, 45, 80 years. But one day pro football will be as big as horse racing or boxing is today. Meaning, yeah, it might still exist, but neither of those has the kind of sway over public consciousness that they once did. I admit I love college football. I love the NFL. My love for the NFL is a vestige. I grew up a Browns fan, and although I was never big enough to play scholastically, I am a student of the game, and it is a deep part of my life habit, and it's really hard to just let go of. But I am less of a fan than I was 10 years ago, and in 10 years I will pay still less attention. I'm appalled by the greed. I'm appalled by the lack of sportsmanship. And I find it awfully hard to defend a sport that causes its participants to risk permanent brain injury. And here's the thing, it's not helmet design. You could make the padding thicker. You could make the helmet 2 feet of padding. You could make it so thick that I could take a full swing at your skull with a ball-peen hammer and you not feel a thing. That still doesn't prevent CTE. A helmet, it would prevent a cranial fracture, but CTE occurs when your body, read your head, read your brain, is going very fast in one direction and then stops or goes in another direction. That's what happens in football. The brain bounces around and it tears the blood vessels, and that cannot be fully prevented. Now, I've thought that since seeing League of Denial. I started to think that football ultimately will go away. But this past April, when I heard Malcolm Gladwell speak, I was stunned by how simply he put it. He agreed with me, but for a different reason. And as he put it, when asked about football, he said, same as me, he loved it. And I love it because it is poetry, it is choreography, it is strategy, and he alluded to those things. And he introduced the idea that, if you know the risks, and you're an adult, and you want to accept the risk for big bucks, that is not unethical. Well, what happens when the phenomenon of CTE is as widely known, as fully comprehended, as what we know today about the health risks associated with tobacco use? Then what happens to football? Football goes away because parents will, in huge numbers, withhold permission for their sons to play. Which means football will just about go away. Something else will take precedence. I don't know what. Rugby, maybe. And again, this won't be for decades, maybe even scores of decades, but someday. Because nothing is forever.
Hey, let me tell you about my book, Shrink. Or wait, I can let others do it.
Welcome back. Remember, you can write to us at the Bruce Channel at yahoo.com. You can watch all of our previous episodes at tinyurl.com/Bruce Channel. Or you can find us on our Facebook page. I've mentioned horse racing, and it's true, it occupies nowhere near the amount of national consciousness as it once did. I suppose there are some reasons for that, not the least of which is if you just want to gamble, there are a lot more legal ways to do it. There are casinos in a lot of places. But another is 100 years ago, everyday people, common folk, had contact with horses. Horses were in the streets. Yeah, they were starting to get a lot more cars, but horses were in the streets. Everybody had a horse, drove a horse, rode a horse. One might even imagine oneself riding the horse in a race. And that's about gone. So again, it's past my deadline. But late Saturday afternoon, we learned whether Nyquist, the winner of the Kentucky Derby, took the second crown in the Triple Crown, the Preakness. And then we'll know whether or not we start looking forward to the Belmont in 3 weeks and whether we have a potential Triple Crown champion or we start a streak of years without one. By the time this goes up, we'll know. All right, on the same day as the Egypt Air flight went down, ending the lives of those 56 people none of us will have heard of, but certainly their families will weep. We also lost two individuals whose names are widely known. One was Angus Young. Born in England, raised in Canada, we know him better as the actor Alan Young. Now, it's too bad that he's best known for the goofy role of Wilbur in Mr. Ed, because he really had a good resume and widely disparate roles. But I think a better measure of the man is this. He was already on the radio by the time he was in high school. He had a radio show on CBC. And when World War II happened, he enlisted in the Royal Canadian Navy. Well, having that show business history, they wanted him to write shows. He quit the Navy and instead enlisted in the Canadian Army. And I'd say that's worth more than a gag line about talking to a horse. On the same day, we of course lost Morley Safer. He'd been with CBS for over 50 years, and there's little to say that hasn't already been said. He could do funny, he could do stern. I personally felt a small connection to him, because when 60 Minutes aired the episode called 33 Kids and a Horse, during which a race call of mine was used.
Coming along from the outside, Osborne Queen goes for the lead.
And she set a world's record for a half-mile track. That same year, she was named Pacer of the Year.
He was the one who hosted that episode. Now, making it almost surreal, he announced his retirement only last week, which sort of makes you wonder. No? He must have known something. Or not, but you sort of got to believe he did. Rest in peace, Messrs. Young and Safer. Jobs well done. So I saw an optical illusion earlier this week. Apparently the original photographer is not known. You may have seen this too. It's gone viral. But if not, I'm going to show you a picture of a brick wall. Now there is something about it. So take a look, take a look. All right, I'm going to count down from 5 seconds and then reveal it. So if you want to play with it a bit before getting the answer, pause your video now. Otherwise, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. and we will zoom in. And what appeared to be a shadow on a small stone turns into a cigar sticking out from the brick wall. And once you know it's there, you can even zoom back out and you cannot not see it. I just think that's fun. All right, so there was no show last week as I posted, and it did come as a surprise at the time. An opportunity to work on a couple of Season 2 episodes from the PBS series Mercy Street arose. I had to take it. But at the end of last week, I was in Virginia. So I got a glimpse into the storyline. I don't know enough. Well, even if I did, I'm not going to tell you. Why should I spoil it for you? But a couple of harmless mentions. The director was Laura Innes. You know she's directed a lot of things, but probably she's best known for her role as Dr. Carrie Weaver on the long-running NBC series ER. I had a chance to shoot this. This was outside the hospital, and they were getting some horses and soldiers positioned. I met a lot of interesting people. This lovely lady is Anna Marie Monita. She played a nun last season. And I met an interesting fellow by the name of Jonathan Williams, with whom it turns out I have some commonality. Turns out, like me, he's a musician, he's a keyboardist. In fact, he was in Cleveland a month or so ago. He plays keyboard with the Pat McGee Band. Maybe you saw him. Some of you may have. Well, the two of us traded stories. We talked about this, we talked about that. His father is Robert Williams Jr. His older brother got to be Robert Williams III. Why am I telling you that? He told me something his father had told him, and I just loved it. And I'm telling you the names because I thought it was worthy of attribution. So to quote Jonathan's father, imagination is the biggest nation of all. Thank you, Mr. Williams, sir. And with that, I will take my leave for this week. But I hope your upcoming week is the best one you've ever had.